Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Med Gym for another Technique Tuesday. This is David Drinks, and in this week, I'm going to show you how to lift this weight properly. If there's one thing in life that you're going to have to do, it's pick something up off the ground. Unfortunately, in the fitness industry, deadlifting a weight often gets a bad rap because people associate it with hurting your back or something that only a meathead does or a weightlifter does.
So, what do you do for a living?
I lift things up and put them down.
Excuse me?
I lift things up and put them down.
But the everyday person shouldn't worry about deadlifting weights off the ground, when in reality, one of the most functional things that you can do and one of the most important activities that you can do well in regular life is learn how to
lift things up and put them down.
So today, I want to talk to you about
lift things up and put them down
and how to do it properly. Now, everyone knows you're not supposed to lift weights with your back. If you try to lift a weight by overusing your back, all you're going to do is end up injuring your back. If you've ever helped a friend move from one house to another or from one apartment to another, the advice you've probably heard given by friends is don't lift with your back, lift with your legs. And by and large, that's true. But a big point that's missing in a lot of people's understanding is where the focus point should be, where the power should come from when you're lifting a weight off the ground. And the problem really arises when you think about lifting a weight as a vertical movement. When you're lifting something off the ground, the weight's moving vertically, but the force in your body is not generated in a vertical direction. It's actually generated in a horizontal direction, and it's generated by your hips. So if you lift something with your back, or if you lift it with your knees, your legs, your quads, generally you're gonna end up either hurting your back or hurting your knees, causing too much stress on one of those joints. But if you lift the weight with your hips, one of the most powerful, one of the strongest joints and muscle groups in your body, your glutes, you're going to lift it more effectively, and you're going to save the back, and you're going to save the knees. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to properly lift a weight by using the glute muscles, by making it more of a horizontal movement and not a vertical movement. So to give you an idea of how this looks, when someone thinks about lifting a weight vertically, they typically think about either rounding their back, bending over this way and pulling up on it, or they think about bending their knees, keeping their torso vertical and pulling straight up. And again, both problems come back to thinking about pulling the weight straight up off the ground, when really your power comes from your hips. And when we're using the hips are going to move in a horizontal plane, back and forward. So you can see as I do that motion, I'm driving my hips back to stretch the hamstrings and the glute muscles to engage those muscles. And as I go to pull forward, my hands automatically rise in a vertical direction as I just keep them tight and close to my body, but the power is being generated from the hips. And that's how we properly lift a weight. So when you're setting up for a deadlift or a hip hinge, a Romanian deadlift, or anything where you're lifting something off the ground, even if it's not in the gym, it's in everyday life, we want to think about this horizontal hip movement where you're going hips back to stretch the proper muscles. Your core is engaged, your back is in a neutral spine, flat position. You're not overly bending the knees, you're primarily driving the hips back. And from there, you're going to drive forward to get the weight up off the ground. So to translate that idea into lifting a barbell off the ground, or really any weight off the ground, we're going to set up here, get close to the bar, and instead of dropping down in a vertical direction to try and get down to the bar, I'm going to slide my hips back, get more horizontal with my torso, a little bit of knee bend to get there, but then as I go to lift the weight off the ground, I'm driving the hips forward and then back to get back to the floor. So you'll notice most of that movement's coming in a horizontal direction. I'm not pulling straight up. Now, a lot of times when I'm coaching someone on a deadlift or how to lift a weight properly, even if I get them into the proper setup where they're in a good hip hinge and their weight's back, a lot of times I'll see a little bit of a technique flaw in that the focus is still on lifting the weight vertically. And when I see that, a lot of times it looks like them getting too much up on the toes and trying to pull the weight up and shrug the shoulders and overuse the back muscles. So change the focus from lifting the weight vertically to driving the hips horizontally when you go to lift the weight off the ground, and you're going to see a world of difference in how much power you can develop without overusing the back. Your back muscles then just become stabilizers. they're not the prime mover in the movement. Your glutes are doing that motion. So you're gonna save your back, you're gonna save your knees, you're gonna lift more effectively, and you can then translate this from what you're doing in the gym, learning how to lift a weight properly, to lifting something in everyday life, whether it's a grocery bag off the floor or something heavy, helping a friend move. You can do it properly because you're getting your power from the right spot. So if you want to start learning how to do this horizontal hip motion, and rather than a vertical motion to not overuse the back, not overuse the knees as you're lifting weight off the ground, we can regress this down to a glute bridge exercise, which is a great glute training exercise which can help teach the exact same horizontal hip motion as we're going for on the deadlift. So to do this, I'm going to set up here on the bench, and we're going to set up with shoulders on the edge of the bench, and I'm just going to drop the hips down towards the floor and then drive them vertically towards the ceiling, but really I'm loading the hips, the glutes against gravity, and just moving in that same horizontal plane at the hips. So we're driving straight up, and now as I go from that glute load it exercise to back on the feet, you'll see it's the exact same movement as I go to lift something up off the ground. So we can start by training in a spine unloaded position here on the bench and focus on getting that horizontal hip motion, and then go right from that, translate it into an on the feet lift with that same exact horizontal movement to start getting the glutes, the most powerful muscles in the body, to engage and to lift the weight off the ground and not overuse the back.